Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this Monday's edition of National Matters. I am your pastor, Pastor Moses Chiluba, and in the studio with me, I have Professor Michael Munkumba, who is not just a blessing in the church, when he's a blessing to the body of Christ, is a blessing to the academic world. Professor Munkumba, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Pastor.
How have you been and how was your day?
The day was fine and I am well.
Absolutely. I'm so grateful that we could meet on national matters. Usually there would be a politician sitting here, but by the grace of God, it's a different ballgame, and we have to get Professor Munkumba. Those of you that are watching us from different countries, you can view this program on YouTube, on Facebook, and other platforms. May God richly bless you. However, tonight we're going to handle not a complicated topic, though we are equal to the task, Professor. One of the professors in this nation, and I'm sure he's watching, Professor Yamba, whenever he comes on Camnet Station, is talking about research in every field. Is always saying that Zambia is on the bottom of the countries in Africa, one of the countries on the bottom because of research, that we lack research, we lack the advancement that is going on in the science world, it be medication, it be agriculture, name it. He says a country cannot do without research. What's your view, Professor?
He's right, Pastor. He's absolutely right. And it does speak to perhaps a bigger and deeper, can I call it a malaise? But it's definitely a bigger and deeper picture. It speaks to our education system. Because research is carried out by researchers. And just as you have engineers, you have accountants, you have politicians, you need people at a younger age to be interested in research. So that when they grow up, they say, I'm going to be a researcher. And then you have to invest. It's an investment. And he's so right. And the subject that we will discuss today, obviously, hinges so much on R&D or research and development. When you are weak in that, you cannot innovate, you cannot improve, you cannot manufacture to the quality standards that are required globally. And so, yeah, my answer to that question, Pastor, is he is absolutely right. And Zambia, that's an area of investment that has lacked, and we're paying the price.
Let's look at this, Professor.
Yes, sir.
I'm not just an admirer of you people who have got what it takes, and you who have 10 more pages of books in a life than those of us who just speak from, the knowledge which was passed on by our parents and the much knowledge which you pick up from the politicians. I want us to look at the industrialization and technology transfer. And by the special grace of God, the president of Development Bank of Zambia, he issued a statement that the next set of billionaires will come from technology and agriculture. And that thing has hit me so hard. From the time he spoke it, when he picked up the reins of power as president of Development Bank of Development African Development Bank.
Okay, ADB.
ADB. And I say, if billionaires will come from technology
And agriculture.
With whatever you come up with in technology, somebody in America will come and buy you off like they are buying Google, they are buying this, they are buying that. But when it comes to agriculture, and Africa has got vast land, can anyone stop us from being billionaires?
No one, Pastor. And again, the statement is fundamental. It's technology challenges Africa, no question about it. But agriculture gives us a head start in the sense that we have the land, as you mentioned, we have the climate. In spite of climate change, we still are in a position where we could use agriculture as a fulcrum to development. The interesting thing, Pastor, is that for a long time, it was seen that industrialization means moving away from agriculture to industries. That's how it was seen for a long time. But now we know that agriculture itself, because of the value chain that is agro-based, is a driver of industrialization. Why should billionaires come from agriculture? Because the growing population in the world means you've got to feed those people. And there's so many products that come from agriculture, whether it's beauty products, medicine. And so agriculture feeds into many value chains. So yeah, if you go into agriculture and you'll soon have 9 billion mouths to feed, apart from all those other byproducts. Yes, agriculture for us could be like the way mobile money gave us quite a head start into technology when we were lagging so far behind, and then we got Safaricom Kenya, and mobile money became the big thing, and Africa suddenly everyone had a phone. And so agriculture is like that. It can give us that quick head start or a chance to leapfrog where we've been left too far behind. The land is there. It's other things that we need to put in place so that we can exploit that opportunity.
Help me to understand this, Professor. You and I are not boys to forget what Dr. Kaunda did, because I remember that we used to assemble Fiat 124.
Correct.
Fiat 127.
Oh, yes.
We used to assemble Land Rovers here.
Oh, yeah.
We used to assemble a lot of vehicles.
Yeah, we were making truck trailers and at Lenko here.
Absolutely. But is it so surprising that today Africa could be talking just about, sorry about this, Rwanda, they are making VWs.
Yeah, and Uganda.
And Uganda.
Making buses.
When Zambia was actually in the 80s, 70s, making those things, where did we go wrong?
Yeah, I think it was a question of go a number of steps forward and then go more steps backwards. There is a context to it. If you take Zambia as an example, actually we were then, or we got into a situation then that we are in as a continent now. So basically it's once bitten, twice shy? No, this time twice bitten. Because we were overly indebted. You remember UNIP left about $7 billion for Zambia alone, and we were struggling to pay that. So it was, we were called what? Highly indebted poor countries. You remember they were called HIPIC. And during President Mwanawasa, so we reached that HIPIC completion point, and we were forgiven. In quotes, the debts were cancelled, we remained with little. Most African countries, most third world countries so-called, were highly indebted. Then that wave of privatize, because now the parastatals were many and they were making losses. with hindsight now, when we look back, we are all very wise. When we look back, we would say we shouldn't have privatized. We should have commercialized. But that's only with hindsight. But at that time, it was you have a gun to your head and you are looking for help, and they tell you, oh yeah, we'll give you the help on condition that. And one of the conditions was government has no business in business. It became a slogan. Get out of business. You can't be a referee and a player. That's what they were saying. So get out and just referee the private sector. You can't be the referee and you're also in the private sector. That was what was being said. And it looked sensible because we were struggling to maintain those very wonderful parastatals that were unfortunately loss-making. Remember, I worked for Indeco Limited.
Absolutely.
And we were under Zimco. And we used to go to Zimco. From Indeco, I went to Zambia Airways. So still under Zimco. So we could see which companies were profitable, like Chilanga Cement, like Zambia Breweries, like Zambia Steel. The rest were making losses.
And the Memaco, is it Memaco?
No, Memaco is under Zimco.
Under Zimco.
Yeah, but the ones I mentioned were under Indeco. So most of them were making losses. So if you make profits, the others eat the profits by making losses. What was needed was to revamp management, maybe put in a bit of capital, which we didn't have again, inject some capital, turn them around, and maybe get rid of a few that were terrible, keep the rest. But because we had the gun to the head, and the condition for help was privatize, and Britain was already privatizing itself. They started privatizing British Rail. I mean, Canada was, New Zealand, they were all privatizing. So they were like, look, everyone is doing it, you too. Where did we go wrong? Zambia's privatization was at breakneck speed. When I look back, that was the issue. We were the ones ahead of everybody else. All the others started learning from us. The mistakes we made, they avoided. So the companies we got rid of, which we shouldn't have, they decided not to do. Like Kenya Airways kept the Kenya Airways within government because they could see the chaos that happened after closing Zambia Airways.
Talking about Zambia Airways, Professor, before you left for diplomatic mission, you were Director of Finance, am I right?
No.
General Manager of Finance?
Yes, because the structure was the Managing Director, then Directors, then General Manager. So I was at the level of General Manager.
Of Finance?
Of Revenues, yes, which was in the Finance Department.
Okay. And now, at the time Zambia was being privatized,
yes,
you had access to information, and again it takes us to research.
Yes.
I'm sure Zambia could have researched
Yes.
the properties that Zambia was owned.
Yes.
Around the world.
Yes.
Did we need to privatize?
No. Okay, that happened in 1995, and I left in 1991. But I already could see what was going to be happening down the road. Definitely, we didn't need to get rid of Zambia. No, there was no reason whatsoever. The assets were so many times higher than the debt that the airline had. Yeah, there was no point privatizing that airline. A lot of research, people have done master's thesis on it. I'm in possession of one master's thesis on Zambia Airways. And the conclusion is the same. You didn't have to get rid of that airline. We were in East Africa at that time. And people, Kenya Airways, all those, they were so sad. Ethiopian Airlines, they were sad that Zambia Airways could close because this was their senior partner, so to speak. And
we were in a better position
than them.
Than Kenya Airways.
Absolutely. So the sadness was each time I would go to pass through Kenya Airways, because I used to take, when I went to East Africa, I was in charge of the privatization section that was responsible for training people across Africa, from Nigeria to South Africa, on privatization matters, like negotiation skills and things. So we would visit Kenya Airways because it was one of those touted as the best privatizations as well, that side. So we would visit them to learn, and they would always express their sadness at the closure of Zambia Airways. Yeah. So no, Zambia Airways should not have been closed. But again, as I said, there was a context to this. There was our own foibles, our own weaknesses, our own lack That too. So ethical issues, lack of understanding, like lack of negotiation skills, and then the pushing from the other side. You must, or else we won't give you this. So that combination, this was, I read a lot of comments on social media, and I see that most of people writing are young people who were not there then, so they will just condemn the privatization, but they're doing it out of context. The context at the time, nobody in Zambia would have stood and said, don't privatize. Nobody. The context was like that. But when you look back now, you see all the variables at play. You know you shouldn't have done that. But you can only say that now with hindsight. But the people who were there then, Zambia had no money, we couldn't finance the mines, we couldn't finance anything, we were broke. And then someone who wants to help, who is going to help you says, unless you do this. So it was either you go completely bankrupt as a country, or you give in. And then you could see everybody in the world is doing it. So the wind, you remember Soviet Union has collapsed. So capitalism is the thing now. And it was sweeping across the world. And we got swept along. For me, the important thing about privatization is to learn lessons in order not to make such mistakes again. Not to keep crying, we shouldn't have done it. That doesn't change anything. The milk is spilled. It is what lessons can we draw from that, so we don't repeat those mistakes. Because, hey, is it Winston Churchill who said those who forget history are condemned to repeat it? So we remember it only for lessons. But where I sit here, I was in, I read privatization deeply and helped train people. I know that I can't condemn what went on except for ethical errors that were committed when people became greedy. Now those are, you can condemn those things. But to just say the whole program shouldn't have happened is to detach it from the context in which it happened. There are things we shouldn't have done when people took advantage. Yeah, we shouldn't have done that. We needed more skills to be able to engage the guys who were coming. So there were things that were going on that were sad because of our lack of knowledge.
What, Professor?
Yes, sir.
We're going more into agriculture.
Okay.
And Professor Reda, who could have been here tonight,
Right.
one of the world's most respected professor in the agriculture world, he could have been here, but we are grateful he will come next time, as he took some injection before coming here.
Correct.
However, Professor Reda says Egypt developed from agriculture. And Egypt was and remains the backbone of the economy of Egypt.
Agriculture, yes.
Agriculture, yeah. Now, what would you say industrialization is?
The original understanding of industrialization, and I think still remains, is essentially moving a whole society into manufacturing. So that manufacturing becomes the center of the economy. So which means you set up industries. It is immediately accompanied by a lot of urbanization, because now people must move from the hinterland to be in towns and cities where they work in factories. And so therefore a lot of job creation, and so on and so forth. And for now, you're also thinking now technology, digitalization, because now side by side, you are thinking of manufacturing that's not so labor intensive, and this is where it becomes tricky. It's not so labor intensive because the technology is displacing human beings, as it were. But it is more moving from consumption oriented, and in the past it was more eking out a living on small plots of land, carrying out subsistence farming, moving from that kind of economy to an economy that is so manufacturing based, that is so industry driven, so to speak, lots of entrepreneurship. And so if you look at the way China moved, they became the so-called world factory, the world's factory. And then they realized, no, we don't want to just be a world's factory. We want to be the innovator of the world. So they upped the game into innovation. which again takes you into technology transfer, but there can't be technology transfer without a proper education system that equips the young people with a capacity to uptake that technology. So that takes you into education now. Are you preparing your kids for the future of work, if you like? The kind of, I mean, there are a lot of jobs, Pastor. Just think about an electric car. When all the cars become electric, can you reflect what will happen to garages, to mechanics, to petrol stations? I mean, these are realities, and it's not a long time from now.
No.
So there are lots of jobs right now that even our school systems are still preparing our kids, and those jobs won't be there in another 15 to 20 years' time. So you have to have an education system then that's preparing for the future of work, which future is already here, okay? So that then you can have the technology that backs up your manufacturing so that you are able to produce at low cost. And then you have competitive products that can be exported. First of all, maybe within the free trade area in Africa, and then outside. Because if you don't have that capacity to produce at competitive rates, you can industrialize, and then you can't export your things to anywhere because they're too expensive. Because other guys are able to use robotics and they produce cheaply, and you can't compete. So this is why in social science we say there are no yes and no answers just like that. It's complex. You have to have assumptions. You say all things being equal, ceteris paribus, and say if these assumptions hold, then yes. If not, then no. Because there are so many variables that you have to play with. An illustration, Pastor, is the development of Dubai, the tourism side of Dubai. Now, when you think about it, how many people... China kind of like took a lot of people from Dubai, but they've gone back to Dubai now because after COVID thing, I think there are fewer people going to China. They are mostly back to Dubai. But Dubai said, look, we are few, I don't know, 2 million people or something. How can we have oil, but how can we really develop with such a small population? Because one of the prerequisites for developing, even industrialization, is population. That's why China is so, they have a population for it. One country has a population of Africa, the whole of Africa, China, even India has a population of Africa, and is one country. So population is good. So they said, we don't have the population. Okay, so let's exploit the world's population by bringing them here as tourists and as workers. But that alone looks very straightforward. Because they really wanted to become one of these state-of-the-art countries. So bring people, but that has a lot of ramifications. When you bring in crowds, do you have the infrastructure to transport them into the country and out? Do you have the airports? Do you have the road for road transportation to hotels? Do you have the hotels? Do you have the shops? Do you have the hospitals if they fall sick? Do you have the eating places? Do you have the security, the safety, so they are not mugged on the street? If they fall sick, surely can you treat it? So there are all these facets you must address.
And do you have enough food?
Food for them to eat.
The people you are
absolutely, and you're a desert country. So when you, and this is the challenge I see when I see even our very educated people engage on social media. I don't know what it is with us Africans, the simplistic approach to very complex matters, reducing them to one variable. When these are very complex issues, actually there is a phrase which is used in social science, it's called wicked problems. A wicked problem is a problem where solving it creates another problem. If you solve that, it creates another. So you have to at once consider all the possible ramifications of trying to solve this problem. And then you address them at the same time by prioritizing them and allocating finance and attack them as the money comes. But you already know all of them. So don't just deal with a symptom because it will just create more chaos. So I see people, no, we can't do this. They are shouting on one variable, but they are forgetting this thing is connected to so many other things. And you have to really sit and look at the big picture. And I look forward myself to a time, Pastor, when we have think tanks. The way Singapore developed. They created a lot of think tanks and then a super think tank. And all the think tanks were feeding into cabinet. So they are feeding into permanent secretaries and ministers and cabinet itself. And so it was all citizens really saying we need our country developed. What I see now is an importation of a culture of infighting, which we are copying, by the way, from South Africa. You see it in the US. Look how they really fight and become serious enemies, but they are citizens, all of them. And we are copying that, but they have the luxury of being developed already, and we have the indignity of being undeveloped. So we can't afford that fratricide that we see out there. You know, brother. Us, we have to say, look, we need to develop. So what is needed? Bring as many people as possible. Let them bring ideas. Let's feed into whoever is ruling at a time. So we move. Yeah, a la Singapore, as the Italians would say. Yes, the way Singapore did it.
Professor.
Yes, sir.
This computer that you have,
yes, Pastor.
It's an asset too for your research,
yes,
for your everything.
Yes.
Are you telling me that as a nation or Africa, we cannot come up with a policy to say we don't want to be buying computers, set up the computer industry here, start manufacturing them here?
That is possible. There is a better way, I suspect, or a more feasible way. Again, we can use examples. Think of the example of China. What China did, unlike what I see as, for a long time, China was politicking a lot. Imperialists, colonialists kind of thing, and they remained poor just like us. For a long time, if you remember, when Tanzania was being made, China was just as poor as us. But they were shouting a lot against imperialists. Then they went quiet, very quiet. There was no more shouting of imperialism from China, except maybe just to please the masses, say a few words. But in the background, they were working with the imperialists. They sent their kids to Western universities, like we've been doing for a long time. They studied there. Then they were very good. So now in the US, if you're a very good student, some company takes you up. A local company in the US, you are attached there and you are Chinese. And they were focused. When they were sending them, it was technology or medicine, or those areas that are crucial for industrialization. That's where they would go to be attached. And they learned the technology. They went back to China and they ignored intellectual property rules. They started copying and started producing. Much of what they produced at first was junk, but they started perfecting. And the Western companies were complaining bitterly that they are stealing our technology, but the guys were just there improving until they were industrialized. Now if China stands up and says, who are you to tell us something? They can do that. They can thump their chest because they've developed. What I see for us here, Pastor, is to want to engage. Now, I had a lot of respect for President Robert Mugabe because he really spoke his mind. But I knew that from a political side, fine, he spoke for the voiceless. It didn't help his country because the guys just slapped sanctions on him and so many people died needlessly. Rather go quiet. Even cooperate. No loss. What matters is you have a long-term plan. Once your economy is firm and standing, you can make noise. Because now you are strong. But you are indebted, heavily indebted, you can't even repay the loans, your people are poor, and you want to be shouting colonialists. But it doesn't help. It makes very good headlines in the newspapers. But does that put food on the table of my poor villager somewhere? Or give medicine to that person? No. So for me, I don't care. Just have a good long-term plan. Find the technology where it is. Cooperate. It doesn't matter as long as you know what you want. It means the brain drain that we have suffered, finding a way of bringing it. We have our people, some of our top people in very powerful industries out there. Can't they come here and help us set up the industries we are talking about? It means setting up a deliberate environment where they can come and they are financed to start those industries. That's what China did. The politicking, I see it, Africa, because we have a pain of the past, where we were brutalized, we were enslaved, we were colonialized. So the temptation to want to stand on an anthill and shout is very big. But what happens in the bush, Pastor, to a small animal that stands on the anthill and makes a lot of noise? Either a big snake will swallow it, or some hunter will see it and kill it. Whereas if it was just in the bushes, it will survive. It will survive. So what we need are good laws, pass the laws quietly. By the way, you go to Dubai to set up a business now, they just quietly tell you, yeah, give 51% to a citizen. There's no discussion. The law is there, 51% give a citizen, 49% is yours. So you start looking for a local guy to partner, to give him 51% shares, and he may not be putting in any penny at all. But because you will need a license to operate. So put the laws there properly and enforce them quietly. Don't even make noise about it. No, we hate foreigners. If a foreigner comes here, why bluff 51? Don't even say anything. When they come, they will go to the investment authority and they will be given, these are the rules, quietly. And investors will quietly abide by the rules. That's what you do. They didn't stand on the anthill and shout.
But the other problem that I've seen, Professor,
yes, sir,
is that in most cases, politicians are from the other side of the fence, where education doesn't mean much. As long as, especially in Africa,
yes,
as long as you can convince the world and talk and insult or beat few people,
yeah,
you qualify to be a politician.
Yes, yes.
And in some cases, I'm not
generalizing.
generalizing.
Not all cases,
yeah.
Yes.
And this is the case that I've seen in Africa.
Yes.
Look where you are. You've helped Uganda, you've helped Tanzania, you've helped many countries in Africa and around the world. You are a visiting professor in some either universities or whatever, but which other politician, I mean, the political people, do they even take interest to say how many brains do we have in Zambia? Or we have Professor Munkumba, or we have Mr. Chulu, or we have this Mr. Daka in the United States. Do we have such data on our mind?
There was during President Mwanawasa, there was a member of parliament called, was it Dr. Mr. Muyovwe? He's late.
Muyovwe, yes.
Yes, he's late. He passed away in Nairobi Hospital. We were in Kenya that time. He was the one who was tasked with the responsibility of looking for all the qualified Zambians across the world. And he shared with me the list when he was in Nairobi in the hospital. And I felt so bad, by the way, because the PhDs that were abroad from Zambia, I just felt terrible. At that time, I was already asking myself questions like, when I would look at the caliber of members of parliament, caliber of people who were making the most noise, and I'm like, so where are all the Zambians? Then I saw the list in Canada, in the US, in New Zealand, and this South Africa, and they were all the top educated Zambians, and they were outside. So President Mwanawasa had instructed Muyovwe to collect all the names, where they are, what their qualifications are. And then they were negotiating with the Commonwealth to assist with financing, so that when they come back, what the government pays, the Commonwealth would top up. That would give them the incentive to come back. Unfortunately, before he could finish that project, he died, and then later, President Mwanawasa also died. So that was the end of the project. But it was intended to do a skills audit of all Zambians who are qualified wherever they are. If this discussion was, for instance, on what can be done to our politics so that politics becomes an engine of development. We could really say a lot, Pastor, because even me just observing, you get that sense of frustration that we have this culture of an obsession with elections. And I have never seen elections bring development. Elections are an experiment in trying to find the right combination of leadership that can take a country forward. That's all. There's nothing magical about elections.
That. Say it again. You said an election is
an experiment in trying to find the right combination of leadership that may take the country forward. The driver, the main reason why we have elections is development. The welfare, the well-being of citizens. That's the main reason. So you are saying, okay, last time we experimented with this. Maybe, are we happy or are we not happy? If you are not happy, you remove them and look for another combination. You keep trying until you find the right one, they move you. Now, democracy itself presupposes something. And this is where for us, it's a lose-lose sometimes. Because democracy is a government of the people, by the people, for the people. It presupposes a people that know what they are doing. So the people are the center. They are the key. If the people themselves have a veil over their eyes, if the people themselves are not armed with sufficient tools of analysis, it means they are like sheep which will be misled by a wolf that is dressed in sheepskin and says, let me take you to drink water or to eat grass. Then he eats them. Because they don't have the capacity to really question. And that then takes us into the need, which is why, Pastor, when I look at complaints against politicians, I usually say, be careful, there are three fingers pointing at you. Politicians are members of our communities. They came from us. They can't suddenly be different. If they look so terrible, it's because we are terrible. Because they are part of us, and we put them there. So it means they are just our mirror. What we don't like with politicians, and we need that to change, we should also look inwardly and say, within our society, this needs to change. Then we can produce the kind of people we want there. That's only one side. The other side is, I mentioned the culture of elections. And for me, the focus should be, right now, Pastor, I would have been loving to hear politicians talk about Vision 2030 all the time. And when they do question anything going on, are these actions taking us to Vision 2030? Or is Vision 2030 still okay? Shouldn't we rework it? It was done in 2006. Is it still relevant? Can we rework it? And then force whoever we give power to make sure they're taking us to that vision. Not about elections. Elections can happen 5 to 6 times within a vision. Vision 2030 from 2006. So many elections. But each election should be taking us to that vision. I hardly ever hear any politician talk about a vision. It's just an election. Is an election an end or a means to an end? It's a means to an end. Like I said, it's a mere experiment. And often we get it wrong. So you put in that MP, hoping he'll do something in your area, he doesn't. And unfortunately, we don't have a recall clause in our laws. The South Africans have it. If you're not performing, you are recalled before the next election. Okay, we don't have that. So you have to live with that non-performer until the next election.
Until 5 years.
Until 5 years. And I saw one young man comment on social media, and I added to his comment, and he took it up. I was saying, okay, so if we are thinking so much about elections now, 2026, so what has happened? Where has 2023, 2024, and 2025 gone to? Are those years already finished? They are done. We should jump to, and this is an African thing. It is already in Kenya, they are already talking about the next election. And it was finished. So what has happened to the intervening years? How do you develop if all your focus is the next one? Another experiment, and then you find again you made a mistake. Another one, another experiment. Before you are old. You've been chasing an illusion. and you are old. No. Whoever we put into power, we must hold them accountable for the intervening period. And they are taking us to that vision. So yes, one of our present danger is a culture of politics we are importing from countries that are already developed, and they can afford to pull each other apart. The economics ignores them and continues to produce and to export. The politicians can make noise. I mean, go to the US, politicians can make noise. The economics is running. For us, when politicians make noise, the economics is also grounded because it's so tied to politics, which is why we need politics of sanity, so that the poor person in Shawat, yes, can surely begin to feel the impact of some development of some kind. From one cycle of elections to another cycle, that from last one to this one, things are better. The next one, better, and each one should build on the previous one. The previous one. Like that. That's what I'm looking forward to, Pastor.
Professor, I can tell you that my heart bleeds.
Yes, Pastor.
My heart bleeds. I'm not a professor like you. I may not have the academic qualifications.
But you have a lot, Pastor. You have a lot.
But by the special grace of God,
amen,
I have a vision.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
And the Bible says where there is no vision, people perish.
Yes.
I say this because 3 years ago, and I put a team together. You remember this, of experts in agriculture.
Correct. Yes.
And I said, guys, where do we go wrong? How much money can we make as a nation?
Yes.
Now, these are scientists, these are accountants, these are statisticians, professors. The paper they did, my goodness. My wife and I led a delegation to State House to present to His Excellency, the former president, President Lungu, 3 years ago. And we said, sir, you don't need IMF. You don't need to borrow. Here's a paper which has been worked on. We have the land.
Yes.
You have the political muscle.
Yes.
All you have to do is to go agriculture.
Yes.
If it's taking roses
yes.
into Europe,
yes.
there is a shortage.
Yep.
And the people put about 12, 15 things that the international community needed.
Needed, yes.
Which even as professor, it will shock you that some of the beans even come from Brazil. Things like fertilizer.
Yes.
All the way from Brazil to here and to Congo. Even some chickens, fresh fish, coming from China to Zambia. Look at the rivers we have. Look at this. So the people put the document together, and we are still able to raise between 8
to
12 billion US dollars.
Yep.
Without depending on copper.
Yep.
But our mines are just locked up in copper, which is a wasting asset.
Correct.
And when I got that document, with the help of God to help the president, look, that time he was president.
Yes.
He's no longer president. We are still eating. So there was nothing political about that.
No.
It is to help my nation.
Yes.
What was the result of that? Pastor Chiluba has become PF. Pastor Chiluba was given money by the president. Simple minds began dictating the flow of things.
Yes.
But what I'm saying, Professor, is here I am, the Lord helping me, that we can make it.
Correct.
we can come out of this debt.
Yes.
But you people who are qualified, you still feel IMF is the answer.
Okay.
You still feel the World Bank is the answer.
Yes.
But for me, I think differently.
Okay.
If I can use the government coffers
Yes.
to buy fertilizer, to buy machinery,
Yes.
give me time,
Yes.
I'll be out of debt.
Okay.
That's how my mind thinks.
Okay. My take on that, remember I started with a wicked problem and the complexity of social decisions and how, excuse me, most of those situations are not necessarily either or. It might be this and. And so when you look at, okay, first of all, the issue of the IMF is, how do you say, a dead animal, in the sense that it's already on board. We have already taken it. So we could have said no to it. By the way, if you go back to, say, 2010, 2011, 2009, I don't think anyone was ever thinking of IMF. Because, I mean, the economy was on a footing where we could take off. I mean, the debt has just been forgiven. Our inflation was low. Our exchange rate was good. Everything, our GDP growth was between 6 and 8%. So we were really at the beginning of. But fast forward 10 years down the road, we are where we were before with so much debt and the owners wanting it now. And you recall that, I think, a year ago or so, we couldn't even pay the interest twice. $42 million. We couldn't pay that just a couple of years ago. So we defaulted even. So we're in a situation where you have Kalova Pastor. My young brother was talking to me about where he borrowed 30,000 kwacha and he had to pay back 60,000 kwacha. No, that's real Kalova. Eh? So the Eurobond, for instance, was 9% interest rate, the last one. The first was 5%. The interest rate went higher as our risk profile went up. So those debts are almost due and they have to be repaid. So we are already in that situation where you are choking already or you are drowning already. At that point, Pastor, you need anything you can grab to, even a snake. You will grab onto it because if it's going to swim out, I'll swim with it. Once you have swum out, then you can begin to consider other things. So the agriculture one you're talking about and many others, to me, are medium to long-term solutions. So if we start now going full blast agriculture, within the next 3 to 5 years, you can begin to talk about that money of 5 to 8 to $12 billion. I mean, we don't need any debt. But right now, you are already saddled with debt. More than 20 billion outside, another 5 billion inside. That needs to be repaid. Now, right now, if you say there's no IMF and there's no negotiation with the creditors who we owe, they will immediately say, pay now, pay the interest rates now. And then you are looking at 90% of all our money being used to pay salaries of civil servants and servicing debt. Not even repaying principal, just interest. 90%, leaving only 10% of the income to do health, to do education, and where's the investment? You can't even invest in anything because we're already here. So these guys have us by the throat because of the debt we already have. So once you negotiate and they say, okay, instead of repaying in the next 5 years, repay in the next 15 years. Okay. Instead of paying so much interest, reduce interest. Okay, we forgive 30% of your debt. At that point now, the question should be, the money we are now saving, where is it going? I would want to see it going to agriculture, going to education, and health. Because now agriculture, education, you are preparing for the future. A health nation is a productive nation. Agriculture, because now we want to diversify from this dependence on a wasting asset, which you mentioned. But we need that breathing space. Because let's take this to a homestead. You have your own house. You've borrowed so badly that the microfinance wants to take over your house now. And then you're like, but you know what? I think I can go and find money by maybe going into mining or going into growing things. but the guys want their money now or they'll take over your house. So you need a solution for the immediate, then you need a solution for the intermediate and the long term. What Zambia needs to do, which I read a lot on social media, is mostly medium to long term solutions. But if someone already has a knife to your throat, they want to kick you out of your house, you also need a solution for now.
But this is what I'm saying, Professor.
Yes, sir.
And the example you've drawn is a perfect example. I'm about to lose my house.
Yes.
To this company.
Yes. Bailiffs are there.
Okay. Obviously,
yes.
Borrowing will make sense. Seeing that I have the capacity to get some money somewhere and put things together. This is where President Mwanawasa brought us, under HIPIC. You see? Under the leadership, the able leadership of Honorable Minister Magande.
Magande, yes.
We came out.
Yes.
Where was the problem? Instead of saying, okay, I've learned from this experience, this money that I've been given, let me now either buy a new house so that if they take this one, I will remain with a better house.
Correct.
Why not think like that?
No. This is exactly what I mentioned earlier. It's regrettable. It's regrettable. For you and I who have been there before, from the UNIP days to MMD to PF to UPND, you regret. We shouldn't be in the place we are now.
Absolutely.
No. We have had enough case studies of ourselves not to fall into this again. We shouldn't even be talking about IMF at this stage. We are only, you see, IMF is like UTH. UTH doesn't go knocking on doors and asking people to go to UTH. People go to UTH themselves.
Some people don't know what UTH is. University Teaching Hospital.
Oh, University Teaching Hospital. Also, I'm thinking I'm just talking to people in Lusaka.
The whole world is watching that.
So, beg your pardon.
Yeah.
Any hospital, like a government hospital, doesn't go door to door asking for people to go there. The sick go to the hospital. Once you are sick, there's no negotiations about should you go to the hospital or not. We should only have discussed the hospital or not before you were sick, so we deal with prevention. Prevention is better than cure. So you could have said, you don't need UTH, my friend. Stop drinking like fish in the water. Stop smoking like a chimney. Stop doing these things. Stop taking too much salt. Cut down on sugar. Go for exercise. Don't just sit so that you don't go to the hospital. But once a guy has already cut through all that and is now sick, it's not the time now to discuss that they don't need the hospital. It's too late. They need to go see a doctor, and if the doctor says we will have to cut you up and it will be very painful, that's the IMF. You will amputate. That's the IMF. You can't now begin to say that doctor is so cruel, in fact he cuts you without anesthesia. You should have avoided going to see that doctor in the first place. But you are already in a situation where you need that doctor. Even if the doctor comes drunk, you probably have no choices.
You still go for
cut the leg. But once you are cut, now be careful not to go back and get the other one cut. Us here, I don't blame the outsiders, pastor, who come to harass us when we are in this situation. For me, it's why do we even come to this situation? Why do we borrow without a plan on how we should deal with this? Go back to a household again. You start borrowing for your house. You have no idea how you will repay that money. Really? We could have go slowly, borrow, and then put it in, like now the borrowing. If all the borrowing went into roads, rail, agriculture, just those three. Actually, started like this: agriculture, roads first, because the roads go into these farming communities. So agriculture, put money. Borrow, put there. Roads, so that they can transport the goods. What was the last one?
I think you mentioned.
Okay, so put, and then energy. Which thankfully we were doing Kafue Gorge and what have you. Those are the areas, because they will pay back the loans. If you don't put into those, then now you start struggling with repayment. And unfortunately, COVID also came. So then it held back a lot of things. Again, you have to plan for eventualities. What if something happens?
But even during that time, like I said, after we presented this, at State House.
Yes.
One thing I believe, Professor, whether you are sick, educated, or you are an idiot,
Yes.
we all eat.
It's like medicine, like clothes, and eating is even more.
And this is why
Yeah.
agriculture should be the backbone
Absolutely.
of any country.
Yes, and especially us with so much arable land, of which we are using so little, with so much water, 60 years or so after independence. I mean, that paper you presented for me should have been the first thing to do. Any government that comes in really should prioritize agriculture. In the way KK wanted to, but the time was not right. I think we were so much into mining that time, we were not thinking agriculture at all. But that's what we should focus on more. As we speak, Zimbabwe needs maize. I know Kenya needs maize. Even just maize, simple maize. Food. There are so many countries that are in need of maize. And they look to Zambia, literally, Congo. Now, if you begin to go into those things, we are discussing avocados, what? I mean, there are billions to be made. And then, of course, factories to be, job creation, factories, beauty products, to export even. Even just to Africa, we can't even meet the market. So it's, and again, a bigger proportion of our people are in agriculture already. So they just need to be helped to become more productive.
This is where now I'm coming to, Professor.
Yes.
Transfer of technology.
Yes.
You see, my son and I visited the professor
Yes.
and just discovered that what the most Zambians get on 1 hectare, the profit they get on 1 hectare,
Yes.
because he is a professor who has done research on Irish potatoes,
Yes.
he's getting 10 times
Yeah.
what an average Zambian gets
Yes.
from 1 hectare.
Yes.
And we have a situation now, Professor, I can tell you,
Yes.
that the market out there is so huge,
Yes.
especially after the war in Ukraine and all this.
Yeah.
I don't know whether Zambians know, whether Africa knows, that this time it can liberate itself financially. I've no idea whether people know or they just look at agriculture from the political point of view.
I do recall, I think it was the president now talking about extension services. Then I remembered during the KK, we had the extension workers. They actually used to come to the villages, to help. They will tell you this type of maize seed, you need to plant it by this time, and this is the type of fertilizer. The spacing between the plants should be this much. And as villagers, we didn't know all that. So they were literally advising us. And you could see my father would grow. Each season we had more bags of maize because of those extension workers. So I heard the talk that we are going to hire more extension workers. But transfer of technology presupposes a population that is skilled enough to uptake that technology, which again, like I said, it speaks to our education system. So we need to prepare our kids, because technology is really with a young generation. For them, they quickly pick it. So us, it's a struggle. For them, it's their second nature. So we need school system that can impart those skills. I think last time we discussed the competence-based curriculum. You recall last time I was here? We said the competence-based curriculum imparts practical skills into the kids. It prepares them for the world of work. It gives them the skills that from day one they are able to work and be productive. Not at asking them for experience. No, they pick that experience while in school. And so we need to already be moving. And I'm hoping that the Ministry of Education is already moving in that direction to have a curriculum that really gives those kind of skills where technology transfer becomes possible. If you look at whether it's China or Malaysia or Dubai or Qatar, all these guys, they've gone high on technology because they know that is the future. And so Rwanda, we talk about Rwanda. So every young kid has a computer out there. They partnered with Microsoft to produce very cheap $100 each computer for each school-going kid, so that they are working with technology in school already, and they're already on internet. So you find, I think Rwanda, they have internet across the country. So wherever you are, you can access internet. So the kids, the teacher doesn't have to stand in front teaching theory. The teacher just tells them, go to your smartphone and Google this. And the kids in groups, they Google and they teach each other, because the information is on the smartphone. In fact, there's better information there than in the head of the teacher if the teacher doesn't even read. So the kids can teach themselves, and the teacher is merely a facilitator of learning. So we need that. They need to be possible, Pastor, to have this technology transfer side by side with the right regulatory and legal framework or environment that makes sure that whoever comes with technology here ensures that there's a Zambian who's shadowing an so-called expatriate. And then you give a period that within such a period, we expect that the local guy has sufficient skills to operate that machinery, to run that software, and so on and so forth. But that regulatory and legal environment or framework must be backstopped by an education system that is also producing those skilled people who can take up that technology.
Question.
Yes, sir.
What are the measures that we are going to take to prevent these occurrences that Zambia, Africa has been going through from time to time, year after year, election after election? What measures should we take?
As I said, Pastor, charity begins
at home.
I checked last week, it still begins at home. It hasn't stopped. And by charity begins at home here means there must be a change within ourselves first. And that speaks to our culture of doing things. I suspect that this is anecdotal, but I think it is also research-based, that in Africa we have a habit of taking action without sufficient work before taking action. We are, other than bureaucracy, we are very good at bureaucratic tendencies, but this deep discussions, deep reflections, deep thinking that then gives birth to sustainable ideas that you can implement. We are very weak in that. And so we need a culture that will ensure that whatever we do is sustainable. It's not too shallow, that we are treating symptoms, not causes. Because long-lasting solutions, what we say, if you want to build a very high, a very tall building, you need a very deep foundation. Yes. But while you're digging that deep foundation, people can become very impatient with you because they can't see anything. You know, what is going on? We don't see anything. I see it again, even, and it's in our own citizens. There's nothing going on. There's no change. But do you know, real change happens in the background, and it may take years. As Africans, Pastor, we are so, you've heard of Abraham Maslow. Abraham Maslow was a management guru those years, and he's been criticized, but I think he has a point. He gave 5 levels of motivation, that we go through 5 levels. And I'm only talking about the basic. He said the basic one is the physiological level, where all you are thinking about is eating, sleeping, you know, having a roof, having some clothes, you know, the basics, you are secure and things. And when those are met, you begin to think of, for instance, a sense of belonging, being recognized, and you know, those are higher level, and finally actualization, where you really feel I have achieved my life dream. Those are higher levels. And what I see for us is that we are so much at the lower level, physiological and security needs, very basic. I need 3 meals a day now. If you are telling me to have only 2 meals, and you are saying what I am doing now, in 5 years' time, you'll be able to fly to Dubai. That's what will happen. You say, I don't like that. Because I'm eating 2 meals, I need 3 now. If I tell you just suffer a little for 12 months, later on, things will improve. And your children, they'll be flying to America whenever they want. You say, what? Me, I sleep hungry now so that my child will go to America. Nonsense. So this inability, and if you look at China, Japan, all these countries we talk about, go back in history, you find how much they paid the price for what we are admiring now. And Africans are busy flying to China. Go and find out even how many people died to build China now the way it is. We are not ready for that. We want, okay, let's develop, but don't touch my stomach, don't touch this. I need to have all these things while we are also developing. It doesn't work like that. So that's why I'm saying we need to change mindsets. A mind, the heart, Pastor, you know the heart. The Bible is full of the heart. Guard the heart. Out of the heart flow things. What is the heart? The heart in the Bible. Now I'm going in another lane which I don't belong to.
No, but I've taught you.
The heart in the Bible is the mind, the subconscious mind. Sub means below. Subconscious, below the conscious. It's a seat of a human being because the beliefs are there. That's where they are. All your experiences are stored there. When you see action, it is coming from that place where we have stored things and they are so we may not even be aware of them. We have to go in there, find out what is in there, change the wrong things. Then the actions will change automatically. So-called the iceberg. That what is below the water we can't see is what matters. The berg, iceberg means ice mountain. Berg means mountain. So the ice mountain. You just see a little ice on the surface. You don't know there's a real mountain underneath. Go under there, deal with it. For us to make sure that whatever we do, Pastor, to answer your question, that it will be long-lasting. You don't get another government comes to change everything. Another government comes to change everything. Because you just dealt with the tip of the iceberg. Is to go down and interrogate our mindsets. And that takes, again, our education, both in school and with civil society, educating the masses, literally. And government can invest there. Educate the masses so the mindsets change. So when you speak development,
do you think politicians also need education?
They should be the first ones. They should actually they should be the very first ones to be educated. So then, Pastor, when you say, guys, can we just tighten our belts for the next 3 years? They say, why? You say, we need to take action 1, 2, 3, 4. And in 3 years, all things being equal, we need to see 4, 5, 6. They are like, okay, this is like an investment. An investment means I forego present gratification, enjoyment, for future enjoyment. That's what an investment is. So if I tell you, it will be tough for the next 24 months, but after that, things will be okay. I'm asking you to invest. So postpone enjoyment. There will be better enjoyment then. Our people don't have that capacity right now.
No.
So that means you need to change minds. So what I've seen, government after government in Zambia and outside of Zambia in Africa, is that the government cannot take painful decisions that are needed. Because there will be an uproar. There will be strikes and riots in the streets.
And, there will be an election after 5 years.
They'll be kicked out. So you step back and take populist decisions, and you avoid those ones that will really take the country on the road to development. Because the population is not prepared for that. That means mindsets have to be changed. That means our education system in school, in another 15 years, we've had out school have been changed. But civil society, government itself, going and holding symposia, from village to village, from city to city, from company to company, compound to compound, literally just educating the masses. So they understand the complexity of what it takes to develop a country.
But certain things, Professor,
yes, sir,
they should just come from one realization that I cannot be going through the same thing all the time.
Yes.
And number two, that I should, like you are saying, in the future I must be comfortable. I'll give an example.
Correct.
I went to buy avocado pears some four years ago.
Yes.
And I bought a very nice one. But it was very expensive, Professor.
Yes.
When I say very expensive, I bought it for then around 20 kwacha.
Yes, and they are still going like that.
Now, I look at that 20 kwacha, I had need for it.
Yes.
And when I tasted those avocados, by the way, it's my favorite fruit.
Correct.
I discovered, instead of me going to that woman from day to day, let me not throw away this seed. This is where you see the vision,
yes,
where it came
to
from.
plant, and we have copied from that vision.
And I got those 4 seeds. I planted them. Those are the 4 trees you see at church.
Yeah, in front there.
In front there. Because I said, why should I keep on buying this?
Yeah, when I can plant.
When I can plant. And now, by the grace of God, the fruits, the flowers have started coming. This is after 4 years, okay?
Wow, yeah.
Now, I looked at in future.
Yeah.
And
You shouldn't
also,
be buying.
yeah, from there, you can see that my wife and I have planted 15,000 avocado trees.
Yes.
And now I'm not just looking at myself.
Yeah.
I'm looking at my grandchildren.
Exactly.
I don't want them to come and buy
Be
those
buying
things.
in the streets.
So, if at personal level,
Yeah.
I can realize to say, I'm not going, 6 years from now, Professor, I want to buy this avocado.
Yes. Yes.
And instead of me just eating, because I can't eat from all the 15,000 trees, even if I sell them for 5 kwacha,
Yes.
I'm not
That's
losing.
a lot, yeah.
I'll still get a lot of money.
Yes.
And
Yes.
grow old gracefully without dancing for anybody.
That stress.
Without stress. So, on a personal level, why can't we learn as a nation to say, this is the path we are going to take?
It's you know, one would wish that everybody thought this way. And, well, there are countries, by the way, when you go to, you find people have been raised, citizens have been raised to that level where everyone thinks like that. Everyone is thinking self-sufficiency and family sufficiency, self-sufficiency, and eventually the nation itself is self-sufficient and is able to export and make a lot of money. I don't see my country there yet, with all due respect. We have a good number of people who have woken up to agriculture, and they are mostly people in towns who are actually working. They're the ones doubling up with some farm, and you see a few young people who are into agriculture. Quite a good number have woken up to this, but a painfully large number are not yet. But just to respond again, Pastor, to what you said, what should Zambia do to avoid this repeat? Let me just read you what China did. Okay, China did some things we discussed. They said one was government financing research and development. So they deliberately went out to finance research and development in all areas they thought were key. That was one. And then they said we need to move to become the factory of the world. After that, become the innovator of the world, which means we need to be producing new ideas. Again, you have to then look around what policies are needed to create that. So you see people filing patents. Like Israel is one of the leading innovators in the world. They are always filing patents of new inventions and things. That was two. The third one, they said government should be both a regulator and a big consumer, buying locally. So you are kind of like supporting your own industry instead of importing from outside. That's the third. Then they said, okay, government should protect local companies from unnecessary competition. So when you set up these companies, you then protect them. And there was a lot of complaints from the West that China is unfair, they are blocking our companies. China was just quiet, he said, our companies are too young, we can't just open them to yours, you come and pulverize them out of existence. Until those companies, in fact, when the China finally allowed the others, they said, come and partner with our own. So deliberately. And then the other one is, they had the ability to have the political will for long-term planning. Now, there was a simple reason why China could do this, because they have an autocratic political system. It's very autocratic. It's not democratic. No. So they can say, we are planning for 30 years. There's no one to question them. So they can say, next 5 years will be very painful, and nobody can say anything. You just survive it. After that, you see, it's good. So that thing was good. Now, that's where we get challenged, because we don't have autocracy. So somehow you have to operate within a democratic system. That's why the education side becomes so important, so that people can can elect the right members of parliament to pass the right laws. You don't elect an MP because he gave you money to buy something. No, you elect an MP because he has ideas.
Or because he belongs to a certain
He is from my village, from my tribe, so I will vote him. The guy is bankrupt. He will go to parliament there and do what? So there's no development. But a sophisticated society will ask questions and then find this guy is empty. He is bribing me. It means he doesn't have it, so he's trying to buy my vote. Do our people have that capacity? So it goes back to education, to civil education, or civic education, etc. So that political will is lacking in many of our countries. They can't take painful decisions because the society will not support them. They'll kick them out. They'll bring in one that says, me, I'll give you free this, free that. From where? Borrowing. So we keep wallowing.
Is Rwanda a democratic nation, or?
No, it's a benevolent dictatorship. A benevolent dictatorship is a kind dictatorship. And if you ask me, Pastor, our countries have never been ready for democracy. We are not ready for democracy. Whether it's US, UK, all these countries that are developed. Well, is Dubai a democracy? Is Qatar a democracy? Is China a democracy? Even Singapore was not a democracy. They were a single-party country when they started developing. They had to plead for other guys to stand as opposition. Even if they said, we will pay for your campaigning. They paid for their campaigning, then they had 7 MPs, the first ones, who were opposition, funded by government to stand, literally saying, Bachirwa, please stand as an MP, we need an opposition. By then the country was already up there. So us, someone has written a paper saying, those countries that are not yet developed, like ourselves, it will be tougher now to develop. We can develop, but it will be tougher because the conditions have changed. Those who did it in the 50s and 60s and 70s were lucky because there was no push for a lot of human rights. They were not there. So guys could really do things that now cannot be allowed. They could pollute the environment and they developed. But now, say, don't pollute the environment, climate change. So now there are more strictures that hold us back. So we have to operate now within these strictures. It's tougher. It can be done, but it's tougher.
But whoever wrote that paper, I would disagree and write another paper.
Yeah, with research.
With research. I would disagree.
Not just opinion, research back.
No, not just opinion. Because here we are talking about agriculture. Okay? One of the things that you said China did was to fund
research and development.
Research and development. And also to protect the market.
Correct.
Which here in Zambia and Africa, we mostly don't do.
True.
We don't protect our industries.
Yeah.
We don't protect our companies from predators.
Yeah.
Because if somebody is selling shoes here,
correct,
I can fly into China and make better ones and still bring them cheaper than the butter.
Our borders are porous. There are no,
So there are no checks and balances on how to do this. This is why I'm saying, Professor, that given a chance to sit in the seat of decision making, I'm not saying I'm envying to go there.
Yeah.
I'm just a supporter of the people that are there.
Correct.
Something can be changed.
True.
And how I wish that government after government would look for think tanks from all the 10 provinces.
Correct.
Pick people here, pick people here, put them together, let's argue, how can we go about this? This nation, we can get out of.
The beauty of that point of think tanks, Pastor, is that the think tank, say per province, they'll be able to work with the members of parliament, with the local leaders there, traditional government, local government. So those guys will be backed by a think tank right there. Because there are a lot of experts in these provinces, and they are individuals. As individuals, they have no influence on decisions. But if they were a think tank, and they are doing research, you can imagine the information that would be feeding into the decision makers at that level. And then you graduate these think tanks all the way to feeding into cabinet. That's what Singapore did, by the way. That helped me a lot because so many minds were brought to bear onto the development agenda. What we have now in our countries is that the political voices are very strong. While I was in East Africa, at one point, when the grade 12 thing became the rage in Zambia, grade 12, it is still so, up to now, apparently the grade 12 is even more important than the PhD. Because if you don't have a grade 12, they will tell you, but you don't have grade 12, so that PhD pays grade 12. So I had to search for my grade 12 certificate. So when that was all the rage, I went to the website of our parliament, just to look at the caliber of our lawmakers. And when you go to the website, their names and the constituents they come from. And the name appears in blue, which means if you put the cursor there, you can click, and it goes behind and shows you the qualifications of that member of parliament. So I read through. I was like, no, this cannot be true. The qualifications, there were some good ones, but far too many were the kind which, if there was an advert for a job in any company, few of them would be taken because there would be too many people with better qualifications who would have applied for those jobs, and these guys wouldn't be taken. But they were the leaders who are passing laws, who are supposed to influence development, and the way the world is so sophisticated now. So if you have people like that who are able to be politicians, then you need those think tanks. Because see, the techno think tanks, then they are plugged into the global system. They'll be able to feed into the politicians whose voice is very loud in the country, but they may lack the sophistry.
That's right.
Of the modern economy. So these guys will be backing this. So the politician now who is an MP in a province somewhere in a constituency will bring those ideas to parliament. Work with the drafters for a private member's bill. That is going to support that idea. He has the voice, the political voice, but doesn't have the depth of techno skills. But the think tank at that level will now supply that. And the politician will bring that to parliament. And so that idea is really very powerful.
But the problem again here in Africa that I see, Professor.
Yes, sir.
If you are a politician in this party,
yes,
and you play the music, I'm not dancing, the chances of you appointing me, even to sit on a board, is next to none. You know, instead of you saying, but why isn't Pastor Chiluba dancing to my music? Maybe let me bring him. He may introduce another song which is better than mine.
This one, Chilea.
So, all those things are some of the impediments that we face in Africa.
It's the Tower of Babel, Pastor. You know, I was checking up today what Africa used to be called before it was Africa. I can't even remember that. It's a very difficult word to pronounce. But it's interpreted to mean the mother of mankind, or the Garden of Eden. So Africa's name before it became Africa, which I think came out of Libya. Africa came, I think, from Libya. The name which Africa was known by is translated the mother of mankind, or the Garden of Eden. So I once watched a preacher say the Tower of Babel was actually built by Africans. Absolutely. And he wasn't joking. He said, this is real. And God, that confusion has stayed here. Because we are the most divided. Even now, you go put up something, and someone comes from another country far away out of Africa and puts up next to you. The Africans will pass yours and buy from that person, not from you, because you are one of them. It happens even in the US among African Americans. So we are
even in churches.
Yes, they list.
Yeah,
even in churches.
Because you find here is a Zambian pastor with brilliant everything.
Yes.
But another foreigner comes here.
Yes.
People who move from this society
to that one.
To this one.
And so that
is. Yeah.
That hasn't helped us, because you just said, because I'm from another, then the guy will not appoint you, which is a pity, because there's a video I watched once which was talking about why Africa is underdeveloped. And he talked about this clanism and nepotism and things, that we go by clans or tribes. And so the best brains can be left out because they are out of my tribe or out of my clan. And who loses? The whole country loses. Because that brain would have done better than the brain you brought in on the basis of tribe or clan or relative. But if you look at these countries that have developed, they went past that a long time ago. They only look for the best brain. The first Prime Minister of Singapore has, you can hunt for it, you can Google it, where he's talking about what a country should do to develop. And one of the things he said is, you must look for your best brains in the country. And in fact, put them in government, he said. Because government is the nerve center. If it is dysfunctional, the whole society is dysfunctional. So look for your best people, put them in government. That was his policy, and he did that. He looked for the best guys and put them in government. And if you look at Singapore's development, technology was led by the government. They even put up kiosks, and the private sector was hiring from government the kiosks of technology hubs. Government was leading the private sector.
God help us.
Because they picked the best brains. And it has to do nothing to do with tribe or, if you look at Singapore, it had Chinese, it had Indians. So they also have what you could have called tribes. They realize this will not help us. Just look for the best brains, don't matter where they come from. That's what we also ought to be doing. But again, it goes back to the primitivity of our politics. With due respect, without fear of contradiction.
As Professor is making this point, dear Camnet TV viewers, our phone numbers are there and the lines are open. Give us a call, send us the text messages, and may God bless this great nation of Zambia.
Amen.
Professor, you are saying with due respect.
Yes, with due respect, without equivocation, without fear of contradiction. Our politics can be better. Yeah, we need to lift them to a level where politicians are servants, full stop. And they are servants of the people. And the people's interests are primary. Not me getting a position, not even my party winning. Let it be competition of ideas, and for the sake of the betterment of the people. That's it. Like I said, our politics in Africa, now it's the whole world, politics have taken center stage. I think as we go towards the Antichrist, I think politics will become even more center stage. Because you need that one world politician. So politics are becoming very central. What a politician says now, if for instance, one politician insults another, their supporters are ready to kill each other. When these two people meet, they even share a cup of tea.
And they phone each other.
Yes, we were seeing this in Kenya a lot. You find two politicians, they make noises. And there are people literally hack each other. Then you see the chaps are sharing a cup of tea and laughing a lot. They are hugging. But there are people are hacking each other.
Yeah.
Which tells you how influential the political voices are and how they cannot afford to be primitive because of the impact they have on our society, which is not so sophisticated. The illiteracy rates are very high, and even the people who have been to school in our country, if they are grade 9 or grade 12, again, it's functional illiteracy. It's functional illiteracy. And so you can't afford to have influential voices that are not very aware of the impact they are having on society. If you, for instance, Pastor, one driver of economic development is how can I put this? The positivity of the mindset of the population. A negative mindset can never develop a country. Because I wake up in the morning and I buy a newspaper and what I read depresses me. I go into the factory to work, I even cause accidents and I can't even operate because my mind is full of negatives. And And so I see politicians, I see journalists, who are so influential, these two. If every morning a journalist wakes up, they are looking for some fellow who will say the biggest negative thing to report. And that's global now. The entire world is like that. News now means the most negative. If you come and talk about a positive thing like agriculture can develop us, that's not news. No. But that politician has insulted another, headlines. So you have a society who is feasting on a staple diet of negative news. That society, to develop itself, it's a depressed society. Good news doesn't make news at all. Negative, terrible news, who insulted who is insulting the most, who is degrading another, who has, that is news. But that's what now is feeding into people's mind. It goes to the heart. Remember, as you think, so are you. What is in the heart? What are you feeding into? Someone has said the heart is your hard drive. The heart is your hard drive.
Let's pick up this call, Professor.
Hello.
Right.
Hello, good evening, sir.
Good evening.
How are you, sir?
I'm all right, and how are you?
Fine. Is this Dr. Mukandawire
Mukandawire, yes.
in Luansha?
Luansha.
Please go ahead and speak to the nation.
Thank you. Good evening, Professor Mukumba.
Good evening, sir.
It's really good to hear from you the way you are articulating the issue.
Thank you.
You know, sometimes I wonder whether politicians watch this discussion and maybe try to see how they can borrow some ideas given from you. Yeah. Now, I just want to say this, that perhaps as in fact has been alluded to, that we have provinces develop think tanks, and these will be feeding into even advising the MPs or the councillors and whatever, so that they become more productive. Now I am thinking that is it not maybe as one of the things we should do, where we can have the parliament being appointed, or ministers rather, being appointed outside parliament. Maybe this will help us, because the president then can look at the pool of these intellectuals like you, and when these are the people who occupy positions. Because, you know, when you look at some of our ministers, they need a lot of help. People with secretaries need a lot of help. I don't know why also people like you are not invited to just go and address the people that are being appointed, so that maybe this will help us to move our country forward. Thank you so much. God bless.
Thank you, Dr. Mukandawire is a keen viewer of Camnet TV. He's in Luansha. But like Dr. Mukandawire has said, you see, the fear is people like yourself, once you get close to the president or to the powers that be, somebody will be tensed up to say, I'm about to lose the job. So even if it's recommending you to say, help us in this area, it will be a difficult thing. I can only wish and pray. President HH likes watching this program in this station. I can wish and pray that he's watching, or some advisor somewhere can say, Mr. President, listen to what is going on the cabinet. Because, you see, every 5 years, election. Every 5 years, election. And what you do in that period is of prime importance.
Absolutely.
I went to a certain minister, and I thought, let me offer my unsolicited advice to this minister. And it's been my tendency from UNIP, eh?
Yes.
Even now,
With
this
Mamadi Mbamashi.
UPND government,
Yes.
we were at one funeral, and I gave one minister, I said, sir, this is my card. I would like us to chat, if there's anything I can help you with. And he says, oh yeah, Pastor Chuba, I'll get in touch with you. After some months, I went to his office. I said, sir, he was not there. I left the card, and I said, madam, this is the last time I'm coming to this office. Before the minister thinks I'm after a job. I'm not looking for a job. I feel I can help,
Yes.
you know.
Contribute something.
I've seen potential in him.
Yes.
He can be a better minister.
Yes.
This is 3 months down the road. He has never even given me a call.
Yeah.
I've left my business cards twice. One to him, one to his private secretary, and I have no intention to visit him ever.
You see, two things. What the doc said, Kenya does that. They passed a law where the president picks outside of parliament for that same reason of having a wider pool, but also for checks and balances, so that parliament really checks the executive. So you don't have parliament is also in the executive as ministers. So they made that split, which perhaps works okay for Kenya. This thing about youth giving unsolicited advice and then the person doesn't come back. It's in leadership we say a leader does not have to have technical skills, and you don't have to know everything as a leader. You just need to be like a choir master, or like what do you call that guy who does this in front of a choir?
He's a choir master.
It's a choir master. Eh?
Yes.
Yeah, there's another word, conductor or something.
Yeah.
That's all you need to be. And the guy even opens the mouth like he's singing. Sometimes there's no words coming out, but he's, you know, wah, wah, wah. And he's organizing those guys who are really good at it. For his job or her job is to just make sure that they are synchronized. So as a leader, say I am a minister or a member of parliament, I want to find out who can give me anything. It doesn't matter who they are. Some of it will be meaningless, but in the word is plethora, in the multitude of the advice, you will find some Tanzanite here, some emerald, some gold, and you pick it. Free of charge, in fact, you are not paying for it. So that's a question of leadership now, that ability to look for advice wherever it can be found. I think it's the English who say even a broken down clock is correct at least once a day when the sun reaches where it broke down. So you can learn from anyone. And so this you give freely and it's not taken up. Anyway, you can say it's a first year, so they are probably up to their eyeballs in a lot of things to do. They are still learning the ropes. There's so much information coming their way, and maybe. But it would also speak to that ability. And Doctor talked about speaking to them. In many places now, they are quite smart. Soon after elections, they call in a lot of people to talk to these guys who are members of parliament. Because the fact that I won an election doesn't mean I'm a leader, I know everything, I know what to do. No. I may need to learn a lot of things. And it's good to put them through a lot of people who talk to them. So you never know, they pick one or two things that really help out there. You mentioned Uganda. That's what I was doing a lot. So after elections, I'm there talking to the members of parliament. And many of them were young guys. And they are writing these things. And I'm like, I'll come back in 3 years' time. Say, come back, you'll see what we'll have done. You know, they are taking, watch out, these are the key performance indicators you must set in place so that you check whether you are really going where you are going. I won an election, but maybe I need a lot to learn so that I do better for my people. No loss there. But in many countries, you win an election, you are given an office, get on with it. See, you won an election, you must be a leader. Leader is not just a title. No, there's more to leadership than that. So,
Oh, Jehovah.
yeah.
Let's see if we have text
question.
messages to respond to, Mr. Director. Good evening. I've observed that in Africa, particularly Zambia, politicians, when they get elected, all they think is to be elected again, not work. As the situation stands now, they've already started campaigning for 2026 instead of working. And that is very detrimental to development. So how can we change the mind of politicians and the politicians and indeed a voter to focus on work, not on the next election? What is your comment? This is Sakala from Chilang.
Yes, but that's what we were discussing earlier. For me, I don't think they change. Fine, we can say let's change the mindset of politicians, which is it's got some kind of reactive change. A reactive change in the sense he's already a member of parliament, she's already a member of parliament, and we need to do something to them. It's a strategy. So this is where I would recommend that they are put through classes periodically. Just like management are expected to go through classes. Board members are expected to go through classes twice a year, at least once a year. Why not these guys who actually hold the economy in their hands? They need to go through some some training periodically, just so that their minds are refocused on why they were elected.
But who would call them for training or refresher course if at all maybe the president is not behind that?
No, it's the secretary to the cabinet is pretty critical when it comes to civil servants and all those guys, but even to members of parliament, because the president receives information from all these guys. I'll tell you what, about 2 months ago now, I got a message, then I got a call from Secretary to Cabinet of Tanzania. He said, look, I'm putting together all my permanent secretaries and I need you to speak to them. Can you come here? I said, no, I'm not able to travel. He said, can you do it via Zoom? I said, yes. So I actually spoke for 1 hour, 1.5 hours or almost 2 hours via Zoom to all the permanent secretaries of Tanzania and the Secretary to the Cabinet. And God willing, I'll be traveling there shortly. And I sent a message that I'm coming. And then I'll call him, I'm coming, is there something else we can do? It's the Secretary to Cabinet. It's not the President who contacted me to talk to them. Secretary to Cabinet said, look, I want you to talk to all these guys. So the Secretary to Cabinet can start a lot of these things. And the President is just to tell him that, sir, we think this. Then the President speaks and probably tell him, come and open, so they realize how serious it is. He opens and he goes away. President Museveni used to love to sit in there. He would actually sit there and even ask questions. Really? Oh, yes. He would fire a lot of questions. And nobody, I remember 3 days, nobody walked out of that hotel's gate for 3 days and 3 nights because President was there.
Some of those pictures you were sending me when you were with Museveni.
Yes.
He was not just coming to open and go. He was attending. Because
he's also a teacher, so he used to be a teacher, so he would really explain. He would, you tell them something. He said, "Excuse me, that's what I've been telling these fellows." So because he really teaches a lot, so he speaks a lot. So he would do that. President can come, sit in, go. That's okay. But as long as President has come and opened, nobody will go away because they know this is serious. My recommendation is that. Let me just put it this way. It's not just government. Just the idea of acquiring knowledge. It's not a very big thing in Zambia compared to East Africa, for instance. Even the budget levels for training, they are very low in Zambia. If I want to train here and I say this is a charge, they will negotiate it down to 50% or less what will be paid in East Africa for the same course. I find that people in East Africa take training so seriously, whether it's private sector, NGOs, government, very seriously. And I found it, having come home, that we don't take acquiring knowledge that seriously. No, here. So again, it goes back to a societal culture that needs to be changed, that knowledge is everything now. Because there's so much change and society is becoming so sophisticated, and the guys who are leading anybody else need to be on top of the knowledge curve. They can't afford to be relying on old knowledge. No, they have to keep abreast of what's going on out there.
Upgrade yourself.
Exactly, you can't be left behind. I mean, countries that are moving forward, it's that. They are always in training. They are always there are some companies I train in East Africa, even now, at the end of the course, exam. And these are managers. Even if it's 2-day course, there's an assessment at the end. They sit an exam. Compulsory. And so that makes everybody so serious in acquiring knowledge. And it's to be appreciated. There is quite a few things we have to do back here. The beautiful thing is that the atmosphere in Zambia is so good. We don't have terrorism. We don't have, you are in a hotel, you are afraid anything could happen. The environment is so peaceful. Which means we have everything we need to be able to have a free mind to learn and to perform at our best.
Talking about terrorism,
yes.
The last time I was in Kenya, after we finished our meeting,
yes,
my friend took me for dinner at that one of the hotels in the mall.
Yes.
You remember that mall?
Yes.
And where we sat and enjoyed the meal. The following day, I flew out.
Yeah, there was.
And there was
that fight
where people,
yes.
And I was showing my wife, I said,
Yes.
God is a
Yes.
great God.
Yes.
I sat there
Yes.
the night before.
Yes.
I flew out.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, after I flew out.
Yes.
There were
people died. No, I mean, there were times when I'm lecturing on the 4th floor and someone comes and whispers to me and says, tell your students, just walk out quietly, don't use the lifts, go by stairs because there is a bomb scare here. Someone has said they've planted a bomb in this building. And we would just quietly depart until tomorrow. So you are never too sure. And yet it's in that environment where people are so thirsty for knowledge and they are extremely productive. And I say here, it's beautiful, the peace. First of all, just coming into Zambia like this, you land. The peace is unbelievable. Just you walking through the street, you are not thinking someone will mug you. Think of South Africa.
Oh, no.
You are not thinking someone will mug you, will rob you, will do what. You are completely free, which means your mind is in a state where it can learn. And then you should be able to produce at the highest because your mind is free. So God has blessed us with that much.
Let's pick up another text messages while we're waiting for other people to call. If there are messages, good evening, my pastor and professor. What are your comments on the abolition of the death sentence, considering that people have become lions in these generations? Yours, Livingstone Chondwe in Kitwe.
I'll leave that to you, Pastor, first.
I'll answer it from the biblical point of view, which is not good for democracy, because the Bible is very clear. So you have done law, Professor. Among your many qualifications, answer it from the legal point of view.
No. Well, again, that goes back to what does our law say now, okay? I think we have death penalty in Zambia. I think there are countries that have abolished it. If you look at the US, some states have, others have abolished. I think the push is to abolish the death penalty. And the idea is, look, work to reform that guy. Killing him doesn't bring the dead one back. Now, what law is, fortunately, the law has no feelings and is blind. So whatever law you arrive at, it will not be thinking of, what, for instance, what will relatives feel like? No. Whatever law is arrived at, that will be the one. So the argument should be, to what end does a death penalty take us to? If it is, what's the word? If it leads to prevention of more murders, that would be one argument. If, and research can show therefore whether the prevalence of the presence of a death penalty, whether it does reduce murders or not. And I think the argument in the US is that having a death penalty has not reduced murders at all. And that's one. The other argument has been that a lot of people, especially, that's for America now, especially African Americans, do get convicted and are put on a death row for crimes they never committed because of the racial thing. So the guy will just say, someone killed here. There was a human being who killed this one. Look around, there's a black one anyway. It might not be you, but someone anyway here. On general principles, you are put in and you are killed. So like a lot of innocent people being killed. So those arguments for the US have pushed. For us in Zambia, okay, so people are becoming lions and therefore the death penalty. I see the law as being reactive. And for me, the emphasis should not be so much on that the murderers should die. I wouldn't even want to go there. Pastor, you said I did the law. I didn't finish the degree. I am not an expert there. My argument would be to go back to the causes of the people becoming lions. Why are people becoming? I'm a social scientist. And in social science, we always ask the question, why? And we prefer that you ask the question why 5 times. Then you stop and say, okay, we have reached the causes. So why, the first answer is a symptom. It's not a cause. We ask why again to that answer. We get another answer, we ask why 5 times. Now we get to the causes of why people might be behaving like that. Now come up with a solution. And that solution may not be death penalty. It may be something else, which will be preventive.
Okay, we'll invite the lawyer.
Indeed.
We'll bring the lawyer.
An expert in that area.
This.
Yes, please.
Going back to agriculture.
Yes, sir.
Where the government is failing to fund, not failing, it's not the right word, where the government may not afford to fund every ambitious, visionary citizen in agriculture, what should be done?
There can be deliberate policies. There's something called venture capital. So you can actually create a venture capital industry. Venture capital is risk capital. They deliberately set up, so government itself can set up like a venture fund, and I think the citizen empowerment could really be skewed towards that, or a part of it could be skewed towards venture capital, where you look out for, especially youngsters. There are so many youngsters with amazing ideas, but they'll go from bank to bank, and the bank is asking for collateral. These are young people, they have no assets. Their only assets are their minds. And they become so frustrated because there's no one willing to finance. So government can set up a venture capital fund, but it can also encourage the setting up of venture capital industry by giving it some incentives so that people with money can actually lay it out. Because if you'll be surprised people have money, but most of them don't know what to do with it. So if you set up an industry, a venture capital industry, and give it some incentives as government, so that money is there, it will be looking out for ideas. So someone has a vision, an idea, they have no money, they will take it on board. And you sign an MOU, you sign an agreement where they will have their cut if you succeed. But if you fail, then they are willing to take that loss. That's what the venture capital industry does.
With the people that watch this broadcast,
yes,
you remember the program we are on, Professor on Agriculture?
Yes.
We have so far recorded over 560,000 hectares of land by our affiliates, the Team Zambia.
Correct.
That 560,000 hectares, given the money,
that's a country.
Can we change this economy?
Of course. Of course, Pastor. I mean, just think about the value chain, the agriculture value chain. You remember that brother who came and presented on the value chain?
Yes.
Just in agriculture alone. The spin-offs. I mean, and why agriculture has not been impactful? It employs the most numbers, but its contribution to GDP is tiny. It's so small, even compared to the Kenyan one, we are probably 10 times less agriculture, and yet we have more land than Kenya, more water than Kenya. Because we were so much on the primary products. Just grow maize, sell maize. Grow fruits and go and sell them in the market as fruits. So there wasn't that value chain upgrading. So you have factories that process. So if you go 560,000 hectares, and they are all productive. My goodness, I mean, look at Dubai. They import those products that we import from them. They just import, they process, they export. So you could actually process here, some of it sell directly to other importers. That is an economy all on its own.
Professor, we'll revisit this because my mind races a lot. You and I sit on the same board, yes. And this thing, this is why I'm surrounded by you professors. And sometimes people think, oh, Pastor Chua knows a lot. They have no idea it up from you people. But
we also tap.
The more you load me with these things, the more I get troubled.
Indeed.
And you feel, how can I influence?
Yes. Yes.
A politician, how can I influence a Zambian person?
Yes.
How can I save this generation before I go to the grave? And you find a lot of obstacles, and apparently I'm not an obstacle runner. I'm a marathon runner. But I don't know.
No, where there is a will, Pastor, there is a way. I think persistence is a value. I'm yet to find people who are persistent and they fail. In the end, they always get what they wanted. It's giving up that is real failure. When you are persistent, you eventually get it. And I think the message of agriculture and Zambia, I think it's resonating with many people, and I think even government itself, I think they are aware that agriculture is our salvation right now as a country. Yes, we are pushing mining because we have minerals. So we are pushing mining everywhere because we have minerals, but agriculture is the one. Mining to me, should just be a source of capital. So really, it should not be money that we consume. Long time ago, when I did a degree in mining conflicts, we had a conclusion that when you sell copper, you don't have income. It's not income. It's like you own furniture in your house, then you sell it. Is that income? You just change your furniture into cash. You still need furniture.
Let's pick up this caller. Hello, good evening.
Hello?
Good evening.
Good evening, Pastor.
Permanently blessed. What's your name, sir, and where are you calling us from?
Yes, please.
What's your name?
Waria.
Waria from where?
Chipata, Eastern.
Please go ahead and contribute to the nation.
Yes, my contribution for agriculture, let the government maybe do it the way they will recruit the teachers, just publish, and then those who want to go into agriculture, the youth can register, and then you pick from there who have got the quality to go into agriculture. Let me publish. Okay?
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. That's so
There is
innovative.
There is another solution.
So innovative. Absolutely.
The government said we will employ 30,000
Teachers.
Why can't the government say we need 30,000 farmers?
And they can work with National Service and all those others.
Absolutely.
And you kind of test them to see those who are just looking for a quick fix. You tell them, my friend, this is a marathon. Then those with a mental fortitude, finance them.
My goodness. Give us the last five text messages, and after we read them, we'll be closing the show. Good evening, the pastor and the professor. I've observed that African politics, you gave us this one.
No.
No. We read it. Good evening, the pastor.
No,
and
go
the professor, I've observed that African politics, particularly in Zambia, when they're elected, they get
detached from the voters.
Detached from the voters, and only answerable to the appointing authority, especially ministers, to safeguard their jobs. Look at the parliament when they are debating. It's quite disappointing. We didn't read this one for sure.
No.
Chanda from Chilanga. But I think it's the same one who wrote that. Okay. Good evening, Pastor Chiluba and the professor. We really need people like you in Zambia. You are an asset. Humphrey Chamunda. Thank you, sir. Don't forget about what Vachanda said.
Yes, yes.
How are you, Pastor? I'm permanently blessed. And Professor Munkumba?
Thank you.
I am enjoying the discussion because the professor is great. Is a great think tank himself, just like me. That's good.
Yes.
Please bring him often for these talks, and I hope the president and his advisors are watching to engage him to train our political leaders and more. He's very wise and can help greatly. Most of what you have discussed has eye-opened the leaders who are open to the new ideas. RPL Chipata.
Okay, no question.
Okay. Good evening, Pastor Chiluba and Professor Munkumba. I am enjoying the discussion. Amazing and brilliant ideas you have. Hopefully, a big population of our country are watching. We pray that our mindsets as people must be changed. The Lord richly bless you, both and Camnet Television. This is Shalom from Kingsley, Kasempa District. Wow, may the Lord bless you. We are remaining with one, Mr. Director. We just read 4. Give me the last one. Okay, we can handle the 4. Your comments.
There was only one with the first
No more
one.
phone call, Mr. Director. Thank you so much. Let's deal with this. Yes.
Yes, the first one of safeguarding their positions.
Absolutely.
It is related to that one of if we had a law where the president appoints from outside. Yes, which is why in Kenya it was the same, and then they decided that no, let him appoint from outside, so that.
So Kenya appoints from outside?
Yes, they are not even called ministers; they are called secretaries. So the president picks from anyone in the country to be ministers. The members of parliament, they just stay in parliament, and then the senators in the Senate. So then the ministers definitely are answerable to the president because they are not elected. But then you have members of parliament who check them now, and they really check them. So that parliament acts like the way what a board of directors is to management in a company. They are not board of directors, and then they are also managers. Although we have what are called the executive directors, they are very rare. In public institutions, we don't even have them. So the board is completely separate from management. Then the board can really supervise the executive. So when the president picks ministers from outside of parliament, the ministers are totally answerable to the president. And he can sack them anytime. Them, whatever. Then the MPs, members of parliament, they now supervise the executive 100% because they don't sit in cabinet. Last time I was hearing some noises in Kenya, the MPs wanting to become ministers again because they were missing the flags on the car. But it is, I think, to me, a better system than this Westminster mixing thing, where you are ministers, you are also parliamentarians.
Yeah.
It confuses the whole thing. Because here I am sitting as a minister, and I'm also an MP, so I'm in parliament. I don't really like what is going on, but I can't oppose because I am in the executive.
And getting double salaries. You get as a
sitting
member
around
of parliament, and then you get as minister.
That system, we got it from the UK, it's not exactly the best. So again, that is now, but the law has to be passed by parliament. So will parliament agree that we shouldn't become ministers because it's them who will become. So it's now society that will have to push and say, no, we want that separation.
A referendum.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's separation.
Wow. Professor, your last words on agriculture. We must find a solution, especially to Team Zambia, our group.
Yeah.
Still believe in God that one of the coming days
Yes.
we should come up with a funding.
Yes.
we should look to
And we will.
people that can help us
Yes.
with huge money.
Yes.
Where the government is going this way, we also go this way
Yeah.
and help to develop our nation.
Contribute.
I am a firm believer of that.
Indeed. My word on, first of all, just on industrialization, I think for a country like Zambia, agriculture is a stepping stone. And fortunately for us, we are also blessed with minerals. So imagine we have minerals in the soil, and then this soil, we have so much soil for agriculture. So I mean, and then with water in that soil. So you can't lose. So agriculture is really, even as we are pushing for mining, which gives us a lot of capital, we need to push a lot for agriculture. And then to bring it down to ourselves, because I say again, charity begins at home. So it's us, at my own personal level, I keep questioning, I need to be doing something in agriculture. You know, those avocados must go into the soil wherever they are found. And then Team Camnet must really get off the ground.
Team Zambia.
Team Zambia, rather, yes.
Yes.
It must get off the ground, and because that 60,000 hectares, that would be massive. Imagine the impact on the livelihood of all those members. And remember, there's a knock-on effect, domino effect,
yeah.
a ripple effect. They are relatives, the people who depend on them. I mean, you impact an entire society. So at a personal level, Team Zambia, and then finally the whole country, yes, let's leave mining to miners, government pushing with the Ministry of Mines, but the rest of us, the soil, the agriculture. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, it will be a different country if we really push that direction.
Well, Professor, I'm so grateful to God that your wife and children allowed you to be with me in the studio. And I'm very grateful to my wife, the CEO of this great television station, and the technicians who labor and push themselves to higher levels. I am forever grateful, even to our journalists. The Healing Word Ministries Church, you are just a blessing. To the people of Zambia, listen, if somebody can't sell you fish, if you don't know where the river is, you can make a fish pond for yourself. Just look for fingerlings. And someday, you will stop buying fish. I'm calling upon the people of Zambia, and especially Team Camnet. If you don't belong to our group with Professor here, Professor Red, and many professors that are in the group, to try and change this nation, please give me a call. Mr. Director, maybe give me the numbers on the screen, 0962 965 883. There is the last number where it's written in prayer. We should not just pray for Zambia, but we should make sure that as individuals we get on with the work. So on that number where it's written prayers, 0962 965 883, just send me a text. That's a personal mobile number. Even after we close here, just send me a text and say, Pastor Chiluba, I want to be part of this Team Zambia. One of the coming days, we'll call upon the national endeavor where we will talk and brainstorm, not only with these professors, but also from people outside the Republic of Zambia. In the meantime, I am forever grateful and indebted to all of you that watch this broadcast. Keep watching Camnet TV. And remember, Camnet TV is not just another channel. Bye-bye.
Bye.